Howdy everybody, it's Amy from Amy's Sparkly Diamond Painting, and I have another PR package for you today. PR is a product review package. These are sent by companies for us to try out and unbox and share with you on videos. And this is from another new company to me, and this is a little bit different because this is a cross-stitch company. So this is from the company called 7 Great. And I thank 7 Great for trusting me with this video and giving me an opportunity to check out their products. So this does come free to me, and I have 2 items in here. But first, because this is a new store for me to show, I thought I'd show their webpage here. So 7 Great is a cross-stitch company, and they have all sorts of cross-stitch items from a lot of the big brands out there, Spring and Joy Sunday and others. And they have beaded diamond paintings, I'm so used to doing diamond painting videos. Beaded cross stitch, 11 count, 14 count, stamped, all sorts of really cool cross stitch images that you can check out here. They also have a sale going on right now, 10% on all products. They have free shipping over $59. And I think when I looked at some of these items, they said on some of them something about, let me check here, it was like buy a certain number, get 5 for the price of 4 as well. So lots of good deals going on right now. So 10%, 5 for 4, free shipping for $59. So they offer big ones. They have brand choices here that you can do on their website here. So Spring, Joy Sunday, a lot of the big ones. And they do sort everything by cross stitch count as well as beaded stuff, 10,144 products. So if you wanted to test out cross stitch, especially since the beaded cross stitch are 9 count, big squares, diamond painting falls right around like 10 count. And so 11 count cross stitch is just slightly smaller squares than a square diamond painting. But anyway, a lot to check out here on their website, and some good deals going on for this weekend coming up. So check them out. So let's look at what we have for you here. So I have this first item I thought was quite interesting because this is already cross-stitched. So if you aren't interested in doing cross-stitch, but you really like having cross-stitch around your home, check this out. This is listed as a table cover on their website. This is 30 by 45 centimeters at regular price of $3.55. So look at that beautiful lace border on here, and as you can see, the cross stitch is done. This is on like a fine linen. There you can see the even weave linen. It's not on Ida cloth, and it's already stitched for you. So if you'd like to have the look of cross stitch around your home at a very reasonable price without having to do it yourself, this is pretty cool, because at $3.55, that's definitely a good deal. And my sister always told me, when she was the one that kind of taught me and got me cross-stitching, the back, as long as the back is neat, that's a sign of a good cross-stitch. So here you can see lays flat, no knots, very nice, and you can definitely see the individual stitches on there and the back stitching and all that. Looks very nice. So this is the first product there, table cover, $3.55, and already done for you. Really nice lace on that one, so that would look really cool. Bedroom nightstand, all sorts of neat things to do with that. So our next product is indeed a big cross stitch here. So this has this really neat snap closure bag here, and this is the Spring brand, and this is called Garden. This is an 11 count, and the size there is 57 by 55 centimeters. This stitch count, 200 stitches by 194 stitches. And here is a picture, although it's got a sticker on here, so I'll open it up and show you in much more detail here. So what we have inside of a spring brand kit, we have lots and lots of floss. Oh, that's so soft. And some needles. And then we have the canvas here. Very nice bag, because you can use this to store it while you're working on it, because cross stitches do typically take a bit longer to do than a diamond painting. So we have instruction sheet here with all you ever needed to know. Typically for 11 count you use 3 strands of this 6-strand floss, and for 14 count it's usually 2 strands. So this is an 11 count. So there's all your instructions, front and back, very detailed. And then you have your chart here, and what's good about this chart is it's printed on a type of paper. It's kind of that glossy paper, and it doesn't have the pattern in the fold here. So the pattern should last through several times of opening and closing. That was one thing about cross-stitch patterns in the past, is they were printed on plain paper, and every time you opened and closed it, you caused more weakness in the seam and made the pattern almost unreadable over time. So this is your chart here. And one of the cool things about being a cross stitcher and diamond painter is that if you wanted to diamond paint this as well, after you finish a cross stitch, you can follow this chart, because the DMC numbers are the same for both cross stitch and diamond painting. So here is the legend here for this charted part, so you could follow along. Now the one thing about this for diamond painting though is this does have back stitch, and back stitch is outlining stitch to give more detail around various areas, and there is not an equivalent to back stitch for diamond painting. So that's why cross stitch patterns can sometimes look a lot more detailed. It's because you can outline things and really make them stand out better. Now this does have a font here that looks like Cyrillic font there, Russian. Use Cyrillic font as well as other European languages, but you can use your own alphabet there and change what that says to whatever you want it to say, like garden or welcome or whatever little message you wanted to put in there. So I will be doing that with this. But we have here, let's look at the big picture. Let's go ahead and open and look at the canvas. It'll be much easier to see what's going on here. So this is a stamped cross stitch, which means that the design is actually printed on the Ida cloth. So here you can see, well, I was thinking it might be easier to see, but actually they use colors that contrast highly, so you can see and read the chart here on the canvas much easier, which means that sometimes it can be difficult to see exactly what the picture looks like on there, because it's a really good idea, though it's really clear to see for stitching. So I quit cross stitching in the past because I couldn't see the cloth real well, and I was going back and forth. I used to stitch on like 32 to 36 count linen, which is very tiny. I used to go for the smallest stitches I could to get the most detail, and my eyes just couldn't do that very well anymore. But with this is a larger 11 count Ida, but they now print the pattern directly onto the Ida cloth. And some of these have the color number on here. And this shows, here you can see these are the colors that are on this canvas here. So the yellow there, for example, we would look at the chart. This is colors 1 through 40 on this side. And the rest of the colors are over here on this half, which goes all the way to 67. So 67 colors with this design. So we can see number 67, that yellow, is DMC 3866, and you can see that quite clearly because they made the legend nice and large on here, so it's not running between the threads there and more difficult to see like you see on some canvases. So that is very clear and very easy to read. So you don't really need this chart for most of your work. You can just look at the symbol here, like the blue. Here, the solid blue would be over on this side, I bet. Let's see, where's the solid blue? Well, maybe it is on this side and I missed it. That looks like 72. Oh, that's interesting because I thought it showed only 67 on there. That shows number 72. That may not be referring to the blue. Let me double check that. So if you're ever unsure about what's printed on the canvas, that's where your paper chart comes in handy. So we can look at the blue on here and see, yes, it is 72. So the 1 through 67 on here is for full stitches. That's the full X on a cross stitch. And then these are half stitches, which is why they didn't show up there on the canvas itself. So that's why it's good to refer back and forth to the chart as well as the fabric. I like to check both. So before I actually stitch, I double check by checking the chart as well. So we have, I should probably do this in a better order here. So we have 67 different colors of full cross stitches. And then we have these colors here, which are just half of a cross stitch. So you don't do the other half. And what that does is it gives kind of a little bit lighter look. So that's why it's in the sky in the background. It just gives it that little bit more muted look to it there. You can kind of see on the picture that that background is pretty light, and it helps make the foreground here, this fence, really stand out. So that's the half cross stitches, and then the back stitch doesn't really show up on your canvas. You really need the chart here to see the back stitch. So we have 6 different colors of back stitch, and then we have 1 color of French knots. And you can replace French knots with beads if you're not a fan of doing French knots. I have learned a few tricks and techniques to doing French knots through the years. They used to bother me, now they do not. And backstitch, I always loved backstitch. I noticed a lot of other cross stitch videos talk about not liking or not wanting to do all the backstitch, but to me that's the best part, because when you get all the cross stitch done, you can sort of see the picture, but it really comes alive when you go through and outline everything and lay that back stitch on the top. And that also is kind of your near the end stage, so you know you're getting close to finishing the project, but it's just fun to see that come to life. So that is on this chart here that you can see the outlining or back stitch that you do for this. So this is probably a little bit more advanced. I wouldn't recommend this one for a beginner cross stitcher because it is quite large. It does have French knots and back stitching as well as half crosses, full crosses. It has no quarter stitches though. Quarter and 3/4 stitches, that goes even more advanced, and typically that's done on linen, although it could be done on Ida cloth. It's just much harder because you're poking through the middle of these little squares on the Ida cloth. So let's see here, the canvas looks very easy to read though. I'm having no problem seeing that. And some companies have really different colors between the chart and the canvas, but this one doesn't. They actually match quite closely, which is good. So it's easy to switch back and forth between one and the other. Some companies have the colors on the canvas very different from the colors you get on the chart. The chart looks more realistic, whereas the canvas is all the bright and strange colors to create the high contrast so you can see the different stitches. But in this case, for this one, the Spring brand, they are almost exact there. And the chart does continue onto small pieces here on that side. So very, very good thick Ida cloth. And if you're wondering, why would I want all these colors? Well, if you've never done a stamped cross stitch before, these colors will be removed once you wash the canvas after you finish. So you use this just as a guide to help you stitch the project, but then once you are done, you soak it for a few hours in lukewarm water, not hot. You don't want the water to be too hot, or some of your threads, especially some of the red colors, might bleed into other colors and all that. So you want to avoid bleeding colors by keeping it lukewarm, and all that is in the instructions. That's why this is a good instruction sheet with lots of details here, but it'll tell you how to take care of it, various notes, how to do the stitches, and also how to wash the canvas, because you do want to be careful about not getting the water too hot, and you let it soak for a few hours in lukewarm water, and all these colors on the Ida cloth will dissolve, and you'll be left with just your stitching without these weird colors in the background. So it's a really neat way that this works now. I really like that. You even get to have the guidelines here to help you count, but really you don't need to do much counting when you have it on the canvas like that. So really, really cool. I love how cross stitch has changed. That's where, okay, I missed that on the bottom. That's where the half cross stitches are. So everything does show up on the legends on here. Cool. So I'm really happy with this one. I think it's a neat pattern here. We've got, I love flowers, so we've got kind of a garden fence here. We have a, oh, I should probably know what that tool is called. It's like a pitchfork and a bucket. We have some butterflies here, lots of flowers. There's a bird, and all the different details there in the roses look really nice. And there's a daisy, lots and lots of different types of colors and flowers. So this one looks like it's going to be fun. Definitely not boring. And just like with diamond painting, we also talk about confetti versus color blocking and cross stitch. So we've got kind of the same idea where these fence posts, because they're almost solid one color, those will be really easy stitching where you don't have to think much. You just kind of go down and cover that color. Really easy for sitting and watching TV. Whereas some of the flower areas down here, there's a lot of color changes down there. So when you have a lot of color changes in a small area, that's called confetti. So let's take a look at the floss here. So we have three? Yes, okay. There are 3 here. So the floss is already separated by color and numbered, and we have 3 different floss cards here. So let's take a close look at this first one here. This is the one with the needles. They come with 2 needles, but I recommend buying more needles. It's good to have a few accessories and tools to go with cross stitch. And these needles actually look a little bit big. I like needles that are just a little bit smaller than that, but those will work just fine. But I recommend getting a few more needles, because 2 for a project this big, it's easy to bend them over time, and they do get kind of worn with the thread going in and out and in and out over time. So the floss here is really soft, very colorful, in 6 strands here. So you want to separate each strand here. We'll show you. I'm kind of doing this somewhat as tutorial to cross stitching for those unfamiliar, but also just kind of showing it here. Not going too far into the tutorial stage, but each strand of floss there has 6 little strands. So there are 6 here. And for 11 count, you only use 3 of those, not the full strand. So you pull out 3 little strands and kind of combine them back together and put them on the needle and stitch. And so one of these strands is actually 2 sets of strands, if that makes sense. So these are numbered just like the canvas and the key. So we have colors 1 through 30 on this card. And you can see these are really long. What I like to do a lot of times is cut these in half. After I pull out my 3 strands, I'll cut it in half and use 2 separate half strands because they do get kind of frayed and worn over time of going in and out of the fabric over and over again. So I do like to use the shorter lengths. Let's go ahead and look at the next one here. We've got lots of more greens and reds and purples. And then the final one here, here's a lot of the background there. The white and the off-white and some of the other browns and peaches. So I'm going to show you, for example. Well, why don't we do it this way? Let's take a look here at this corner. So this corner is this upside down U, is maybe the best way to call that. And I'm going to take a look here and see if it's the same. Yes, same symbol on the chart there. Oh, my light ring just turned off, but that's okay. So upside down U in that red color looks like color 63 here, or 3857. I'm going to double check here and make sure I've got it right. Yeah. So we can find that number there, and that was number 63. So I'm going to find number 63. So here we go. So I'm going to pull these out. There is a way that you can do it just pulling one strand out at a time, but it can get tied up in knots and everything if you don't have a lot of experience doing that. So I'm just going to pull the whole thing out and remove my one strand there, and I'll put the other back so I remember what color that is. Here, don't want to lose that one. And then here's my strand. I'm going to cut this, fold it in half here, like so. There we go. And then I'm going to cut it in half, and that way I have shorter lengths to work with, because I do prefer working with the shorter lengths. So I can put this one back on the card as well. Let me find the right color, 63, there we go. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to pull 3 of those 6 strands out. So there's 1, 2, and you'll notice I'm pulling them out individually instead of as a group, because if you want good coverage on your canvas, you want this to be as thick as you can. So I always pull each strand out individually and then combine them together, and that'll be just a little bit thicker than if you leave it twisted. So even for this one, even though this is 3 strands, before I use this, I'm going to separate each strand individually and put it back together. That's one of the good cross-stitch tips for keeping the thread nice and full on your canvas instead of all twisted up there, is to separate out each strand and then combine them back together. And that way it's a little bit thicker and smoother and will lay flat for you. So we have our strand here of 3. Let's see if I can get a needle out here. And these are, the bigger needles are easier to thread. So I don't need a needle threader for these. I do need a needle threader for smaller ones, obviously, because my eyesight isn't the best. But the way I thread a needle is I fold the thread in half here, just to make it easier to grab there at the end. And then I push that folded area through. So quick and easy. And there we go. Now we're ready to cross stitch with this color. And I can take the end here. And I've seen several videos, several different ways to attach your thread so that it doesn't pull out. I don't knot my threads, definitely not a fan of knotting. But I do the older way. I don't, oops, I pulled too far. I don't like, there are ways where you can just push it halfway into that square and pull it, and it will kind of stay while you do a few stitches. What I like to do is leave a tail of about, half an inch or so, and the first few stitches here I'm going to cover that tail. So it really only takes 1 or 2 before it starts here. And I'm going to flip it over on the back to see for the first couple stitches there, and I'm going to secure that tail with my first few stitches, and that way I don't need a knot. And after I'm done with this color, I'll go back and trim it a little bit. So the way cross stitch works is you're just making X's on the fabric, and the way to save the most floss is to go one direction on a row here with the first half of the stitches, and sometimes I find it easier when I'm starting to flip it to the back to find where that hole is. So I'll just do a few here. I don't want to keep you too long with this, but you go one direction to do the first half of the stitches, and you can just see how I don't need to look at a chart. I just follow along with what the canvas shows for that symbol there. Hopefully this is coming out okay. I'm kind of moving it around a lot. So we're gonna one more stitch before it switches symbols there. Now I could reach out and get these two, but I'm not in this case. That's about the longest I would stretch across, because what it does is it leaves a long piece of thread along the back, and that can get messy over time. Usually about a couple centimeters or less is the longest you should be stretching fabric or stretching your yarn out to the next holes. I don't, though. I'm going to go back and get that at a later time once I get this other color worked, and then I can go back with a short length and do those two. So then once you hit the end of that symbol in that row, then you go back the other direction, and that finishes the X. Now another tip with cross stitch is that it looks smoothest and best if all the top layers here, the top of the X, all go in the same direction. So for this next row, I'm going to make sure that bottom left to top right are the lower end of the X, and then the bottom right to top left is always the top of that X. So you want to make sure that that top layer is all laying in the same diagonal direction. And that also helps with your half stitches, because they only, my pupper says hi. Because you want your half stitches to also kind of match up. So when I do the half stitches in the sky, I'm going to make sure that they follow kind of that finish, that upper leg, I guess is maybe the word for it, that upper leg of the X there. So I'm going to make sure that my half stitches are bottom right to top left, and that way they will match smoothly with the rest. So when you, here, let me show you an example. So by going the same way, I'll just do one here and then take it out later, is bottom left to top right for the first leg, and then top left to bottom right, or bottom right to top left there. So the diagonal lean is the same for that top half of the stitch. To do it the opposite way would be to start with that top leg there, and then switch. And now that top is the opposite. It's going bottom. This is hard to explain. Let's kick the camera there. This is hard to explain. I'm not doing the best job here. But on this stitch, the top leg there is going this direction here, from bottom right to top left. Now on this one, it's the opposite. It's going bottom left to top right. So if you have a bunch of stitches going different directions like that, it gives it kind of a rougher look. It's not smooth and quite as neat. And the easiest way to remove a stitch, if you make a mistake, is to take the thread off the needle and maybe use not the pointy end, but the other one to reach under and just pull that stitch up. And it's better not to use the pointy end because you won't be eating into that thread and poking at it and causing it to fray as much. See that? So I just pulled all those out there. So I can go back, thread my needle again. You will be threading needles a lot. So if you do have trouble with your vision, you probably do want to get a needle threader. So there we go. Let's go ahead and finish this row. So then, if you're wondering, okay, here, how do I do the next row? Well, you would go up here to that. Let's see if I can get that to zoom in. The symbol there is kind of making it tough to see, but I would go up to the top corner here, the top right, and then back down up against the other thread there, and then I can continue on going across that bottom next hole and up so that they're all pointing in the same direction. And do the next row here. Try to do this kind of quick. Now I have seen where some people push their needle through like this to do it even more quickly, but I don't do that very fast. So if you do, more power to you. I'm not fast that way. But that is a way where you can just keep it on the top there, is kind of bend the fabric so you can reach that bottom hole like that. I'm not very good at that though. I prefer the stabby method. Pull it up, push it down. And then now we go back. So we've filled in all that area for that symbol. Now we're going to go back to finish the other half of those X's and all go in the same diagonal direction for that second leg of the X, like that. So if you're a diamond painter and have never tried cross stitching, they are very close to each other. Same DMC colors, same idea where you're turning an image into pixels. However, you can get a lot more detail both with the back stitching and with the smaller sizes that you can get these X's. So this is 11 count, and square diamond painting is about 10 count, which is just slightly bigger. So the higher the count, the smaller, because it's the number of squares per inch. So this is 11 squares per inch diamond count painting. Trying to do cross stitch and talk at the same time, a little bit tricky. But 11 count is 11 squares per inch. 10 count for diamond painting is about 10 squares per inch, and then 14 count is 14 squares per inch. So a 40 by 40 and 14 count would give a lot more stitches and a lot more detail. And then going all the way to 18 count, there is 18 count out there. That would be 18 squares per inch. So a 40 by 40 and 18 count would be a ton of stitches, ton of small stitches, and a lot more detail. And then of course there is 22 count, but often that's done over 2 to make 11 count. It's a type of embroidery called hardanger, if you've ever heard of that. Although I have done a cross stitch on 22 count and make it really tiny and detailed. So those are kind of fun. So I was going out of order on purpose here on this one just to show you the difference on the back. So all my stitches go the same direction, but I kind of switched around the order and everything. So you can see that the back looks a little bit different based on whether you go up and down or side to side with your rows. You can switch it around because the front ends up looking about the same, but you will use more thread. So if you are doing each X individually instead of across the row and back, you are using more thread. So it is possible with a kit that you may run out of thread. But since there are DMC numbers on, not on there, but on the chart here, if you do run out of thread, it's really easy to run to the craft store and get the colors you need. And hopefully they're close enough in dye lot, just like diamond painting. You do see sometimes the same color looks slightly different. If it is close enough in dye lot, then it should match okay. So to finish a thread, you just tuck it in across some stitches in the back. So again, no knots, you just run your needle through the back and pull, and then I always try to store my needle on the canvas. I used to just like poke it in the side of the couch or other things like that, and well, you can end up losing your needles and finding them later while you're walking on the floor. These are really dull scissors here. I recommend sharper embroidery scissors if you're doing cross stitch. So there's that little section. I will save this because I did use a lot of thread doing that. I don't want to toss out any little pieces. This little piece will be great for some of these other little spots throughout here. So the reason I didn't do that one is I'm going to wait and fill this in for my next color. I don't have to start by holding that tail of thread and stitching over it. I can just do the same thing as how I ended. I just fill this needle with the next color. Well, I'm stopping here because I've got a phone call trying to come in. I'm going to cancel that. Okay. So I would fill the needle with the next color, and instead of holding it while I stitch over the tail, what I can do now is just tuck it under the stitches I've already done and just start going again. So that is the very basics, very basics of cross stitch. You can find lots of videos out there with tips and tricks and all that good stuff. I'm going to put this little piece of thread back right now so I don't lose it. I haven't done a spring brand cross stitch before, so I'm not sure how generous they are with the threads, but usually most companies will give you plenty to finish a project. So here again, a lot of people like to see all the colors together, so we'll do that here. We'll combine all three of these and give you one last look at all the beautiful thread colors here with this one. And this does indeed look like a lot of floss. And you do want to watch out when you're pulling them in and out that you don't get the bottoms all tangled up. So tangling can be an issue, but I have seen where some people like to stick each of these cards separately with a Ziploc bag kind of holding the bottom, and that way when you pull threads in and out and all that, you don't get them all tangled with each other. So that is one trick you can try. But if you like diamond painting and you've never tried cross stitch, you might want to check this out. This is the company 7 Great, and the prices are really cheap for these cross stitches. Like I said, this 11 count was $17.17 regular price, and it is from the brand Spring. Yeah, I can't talk. From the company 7 Great, and right now they have lots of sales going on. I'd like to thank 7 Great for giving me the opportunity to open and show you this cross stitch. And the good thing that I was going to say about diamond painting versus cross stitch is very portable, and that's why having this little enclosure, snap enclosure envelope is really handy. This is made out of nice thick plastic, so if you like diamond painting but you're going on trips and you don't want to bring a diamond painting with you, you can take a cross stitch with you and kind of enjoy the same meditation, the same relaxation of creating a beautiful picture, but it's much more portable. So I hope you give this a try. I hope you check out 7 Great, And I'll show you one more time here, their website. Here, lots and lots of beautiful pictures and different brands out there. So huge variety, just like diamond painting, and a lot of the same artists, a lot of the same artwork that you can find. And it's just something different to try. So here's a few more of the brands that they have here. And let's see, what's new, top sellers. And they also sell tools. And I'm curious what sort of, oops, hit the wrong one there. So they also have bookmarks, pillowcases, canvas bags, and bead embroidery under the DIY crafts. So a lot to look at on their webpage. Check them out. And I will put links to these products below. And I thank you for watching. And I thank 7 Great for letting me review these products. I'll catch you next time.